Welcome to another Thursday night mock draft here on Johnny Talk Sports. Now, on last week's mock draft 4.0, there was a comment in the comment section that I received saying that it was the dumbest mock ever. So, I took that comment and I inspired to make 5.0 even dumber. So, without further ado, let me just say one thing before we get off and start the 5.0. There will be no Thursday night mock draft next Thursday. And that's because it's the first round of March Madness, and I would rather watch that than do a mock draft, and I know all of you would rather watch March Madness than another mock draft, since I've done, after tonight, 5 of them already. And plus, at some point, I'm planning on doing a mock draft as well about the offseason effect of how off-season moves by several teams affects the NFL draft. So, just wanted to put that out there before we began 5.0, that there will be no Thursday night mock draft next Thursday. Because I really want to watch March Madness, because that is something that I am really looking forward to. So, without further ado, let's get to the mock draft 5.0. So, since, like I said just a minute ago, since the comment that was received in the comment section saying it was the dumbest mock ever, I've decided to make 5.0 a little bit dumber. So here we go. First overall pick, the Arizona Cardinals. Now, many are saying that's going to be Kyler Murray, the quarterback out of Oklahoma, because the Cardinals are going to trade Josh Rosen. Well, like I said last week, at least what you saw on the PowerPoint that I made at 4.0, until I see them take that action, because actions speak a lot louder than words, and that's the saying that everybody uses, that actions speak louder than words. And just because we've had those words, we have seen no action. And until we see action, Nick Bosa is going to be my pick. So Nick Bosa, defensive out of Ohio State. Moving on to number 2, the San Francisco 49ers take Josh Allen out of Kentucky. And Josh Allen, he adds a major presence to the 49ers defense. Moving on to pick 3. Now, this is kind of something that I would be talking about of off-season moves making an effect. So, here's kind of what I'm talking about. This is going to be a prime example of when we get to that off-season effect mock draft. At number 3, the New York Jets go with Jawan Taylor, offensive tackle out of Florida. Now, offensive tackles, it's not really the norm to go offensive tackle with the first in the first round, let alone maybe top 5. Although we've seen offensive tackles go first overall a couple times, it's not really the norm. But the New York Jets, Sam Darnold, their quarterback, at least what they're hoping is the long-term quarterback, the franchise quarterback. And you signed Le'Veon Bell earlier this week. So obviously, the logical thing for me is I would assume that you want to draft an offensive tackle to kind of protect your franchise quarterback and to set up more gaps for Le'Veon Bell. Because you spent, not as much money as what I assumed and what a lot of you assumed that was going to be sacrificed to sign someone like Le'Veon Bell. So, the way I see it, I take the logical route for the Jets with the 3rd overall pick. Number 4, I have the Oakland Raiders going with Montez Sweat, defensive end out of Mississippi State. Montez Sweat, he's really improved his draft stock ever since the mock draft process has started. He started off towards maybe the middle of the first round. He's gone all the way up to the top 4. And I feel like if Nick Bosa wasn't in this draft class, people would consider Montez Sweat to be the number 1 prospect. Well, maybe not number 1 prospect, maybe number 1 pick. I feel like if Nick Bosa decided to return to Ohio State for another year, I think Montez Sweat would be the number one prospect on many people's big boards. That's how good I think Montez Sweat is. And a lot of people, a lot of fans, they always want these good players from the SEC. And lately it's been Clemson players. Clemson players and SEC defensive players get a lot of hype. Well, SEC players in general get a lot of hype. I think Montez Sweat, I think he's earned the right to have that hype, and I think he falls to Oakland at number 4 because the Raiders, they missed out on Nick Bosa, but they get the next best thing in the situation, which is Montez Sweat. Number 5, I have the Tampa Bay Buccaneers going with Greedy Williams, cornerback out of LSU. And the Buccaneers, they need to improve their secondary. Moving on though, because there's really not much to talk about with Tampa Bay. Although I feel like maybe Tampa Bay, they may be a team that maybe would ideally maybe trade down to maybe allow maybe a team that wants a quarterback. Although, with all the offseason moves that we've had, and I'll kind of cover them as we move along towards teams that have made offseason moves, there really doesn't seem to be teams out there looking for quarterbacks right now. It seemed early in this mock draft process, there was always, in a lot of maybe your mock drafts and maybe even my mock drafts, about 4 or 5 quarterbacks just in the first round. Now we're down to maybe 2 or 3 in the first round. So Tampa Bay needs to improve their secondary. Moving on, number 6, the New York Giants. Now this is an obvious one. It's been the same thing for the last 4 mock drafts. It's the same one for the 5th one. Dwayne Haskins, quarterback out of Ohio State. And the Giants, they traded Odell Beckham earlier this week, and today they did sign Golden Tate. So it's going to be interesting to see what they do with pick number 17. They could go with a wide receiver at number 17 to kind of complement Tate and Shepard, or they could go offensive, or they can go offensive line. Something they probably should have done, or at least, yes, I forget what I was about to say. But the Giants, they got to improve their offensive line as well. And I think getting the quarterback in Dwayne Haskins, I feel like it would at least invest. It's kind of a trust project with Dwayne Haskins, especially if they don't actually release Eli Manning, which I feel like the Giants should release Eli Manning because he's 38, and I feel like the only team that would even be interested in Eli Manning would probably be the Dolphins, because right now the Dolphins, they're one of those teams that are pursuing a quarterback right now. And they've lost out on quarterbacks in this offseason so far. And either they're going to draft one out of desperation, or they may try to convince a team to maybe give them a backup QB or something. Anyway, moving on though, number 7, the Jacksonville Jaguars going with Quinnen Williams, defensive tackle out of Alabama. And Quinnen Williams, the best player available right now. Quinnen Williams was the number one pick in a lot of mock drafts, maybe in October before I started paying attention to making mock drafts. And the Jaguars, they signed Nick Foles earlier this week. They signed Nick Foles, the quarterback from the Eagles, the backup that led the Eagles to their first Super Bowl in franchise history. And now they don't need a quarterback right now because he is set for 4 years for $88 million. So they take the next best available option to go with Quinnen Williams, the best defensive player available, and ultimately replace Malik Jackson. Although this pick could also be DK Metcalf, wide receiver of Ole Miss, to give Nick Foles a huge presence and a huge target to throw to target maybe 10 to 14 times a game. So I think that the number 7 pick, if we're in this situation, if the slight chance that these 6 picks have so far been the same, I would say that possibly number 7 could be DK Metcalf. But I think with a prospect like Quinnen Williams, you can't pass up on him while you have the chance. It's tough making these executive decisions, but that's what people get paid the big bucks for. And unfortunately, I don't. Number 8, I have the Detroit Lions going with Devin White, linebacker of LSU. Kind of the free agency effect as well. In the last mock draft, I had them going with TJ Hawkinson, the tight end out of Iowa. Although earlier this week they signed Jesse James, the former Steelers tight end, which I think that eliminates their tight end option. And they also signed Trey Flowers earlier this week. So the Lions, they've made some moves. And I believe the Lions also signed Danny Amendola, if I'm not mistaken. So this is kind of, at least, the Lions covering their bases based off of needs. And I think Devin White, I feel like he was the best. He's the best out of all the linebackers. In fact, many say that he is, and I think that he is as well. Moving on to number 9, the Buffalo Bills going with Ed Oliver, defensive tackle out of Houston. Now, Ed Oliver is an interesting prospect. He was the highest ranked recruit to sign or to commit to a group of 5 school. And many thought that he was a future number 1 overall pick. Then he had an injury. He had a season-ending injury, I believe, in his sophomore season, which kind of hurt his draft stock a little bit, went down to the top 5. But now some teams have, like some experts have him in the middle of the first round, some still top 10. I still think he slips into the top 10, though. I think the Bills, they find their Kyle Williams replacement. This is kind of a logic thing. Number 10, I have the Denver Broncos going with Jonah Williams, offensive tackle out of Alabama. Once again, this is kind of like a logical thing, because it seems as if the Broncos are all in on Joe Flacco right now. Although I could be wrong, and they may go with one of the quarterbacks. They may go with Kyler Murray, since he's still available at 10 in this mock draft. Because, like I said, until the Cardinals actually trade Josh Rosen and they take action on it, Nick Bosa is still the number 1 pick to me. So this is kind of a logic thing. Protect Joe Flacco. And even if they're not all in on Joe Flacco, you can't just go around drafting quarterbacks in round 1. You can easily invest in quarterbacks in rounds 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, or whenever. So you can just always do that. So set up your offensive line to be a lot better. Number 11, this is kind of also a logical pick. I feel like the Cincinnati Bengals with Cody Ford, offensive tackle of Oklahoma. And I feel like he's one of these underrated offensive tackle prospects. People haven't really talked about him that much. Some may have him falling outside the first round, some late first round. But I think he falls right into the early middle of the first round here with Cincinnati in this mock draft. I just think that Cody Ford, he just has the experience of an offensive lineman. I mean, he's protected for Baker Mayfield, and he's protected for Kyler Murray, which has led them to winning Heisman trophies and put Oklahoma in the college football playoff. So Cody Ford has been in big moments in his college career. I think he'd be in big moments in his NFL career as well. Next, number 12 are the Green Bay Packers dealing with Cullen Farrell, defensive end out of Clemson. This is an interesting pick as well, because Farrell, well, the fact that all of the Clemson defensive line is in the NFL, this time around, because they all came back for one more season, because they knew that something was special about that Clemson defensive line. And they came back to win a national championship. And that's what they did. They knew they had something special. They knew Clemson had something special going on. And Cullen Farrell, he's one of those prospects that have played in the moment in college, and can they translate it into the NFL level? I think, like I said earlier, that a lot of fans, they want this person, they want that person. They want the Alabama prospects. They want the Clemson prospects. They want the Ohio State prospects. They want Oklahoma prospects. They just want anything at this point. And I feel like Packers fans are kind of like that. They want anybody on defense, because their defense has been weak for years on end. And last year they drafted 2 corners with their first 2 picks. And this time I think they go with the defense to start off with because they have 2 first-round picks this year. I think they at least go defense on this pick with Colin Farrell. Number 13, I have the Miami Dolphins go with Kyler Murray, the quarterback out of Oklahoma. Now, I've had Kyler Murray in the last mock draft being traded up to. I had the Dolphins trading up to draft Kyler Murray. But I didn't set up any trades for this mock draft. I just feel like Kyler Murray, like I said, I'm still not sold on Kyler Murray getting drafted by the Cardinals until they trade Josh Rosen, or until it actually happens, until Roger Goodell says, with the first overall pick in the 2019 NFL Draft, the Arizona Cardinals select Kyler Murray. I'm not sold on any of the rumors. I'm not sold on the, it's a done deal, the Cardinals are going to draft Kyler Murray with the number 1 overall pick. Until Roger Goodell says those words, I'm not buying any of it. And I don't care who says what. I don't care if Adam Schefter says it. I don't care if Ian Rappaport says it. Until it actually happens, I'm not going to believe it. Everyone just jumps to conclusions all the time. But either way, the Dolphins are one of those teams that are looking for a quarterback right now. They've lost out on Joe Flacco, they've lost out on Case Keenum, and they've lost out on Nick Foles. They've lost out on 3 quarterbacks in this offseason. Are they going to move on from Ryan Tannehill? Ryan Tannehill is obviously going to be off the Dolphins soon. Whether it's this offseason or maybe the offseason after that, there's no way Tannehill's going to be the quarterback for the Miami Dolphins after 2020. There's just no way. So draft Kyler Murray now. Maybe give him some time. Maybe start him in week 4 or start him right away. But I just feel like the Dolphins will take anybody at quarterback at this point. At number 14, I have the Atlanta Falcons go with Rashawn Gary, defensive out of Michigan. Now, Gary is someone that has been at least slipped in a lot of mock drafts. And this is kind of the area where I think he may fall into, to about 14. I feel like he's going to go top 10 or he's going to go a little bit towards this area. I don't think he's going to fall outside the top 20. I don't think he slips into day 2. But Rashawn Gary, I feel like the Falcons could use anyone on defense at this point. Their defense was mediocre last year. Some of it was because of injury. Some was just because there was just poor effort. But we'll see what happens, though. I feel like this is a solid pickup for the Falcons. Moving on to number 15, I have the Washington Redskins with DK Metcalf, wide receiver out of Ole Miss, and the best wide receiver on the board. And the Redskins, they traded for Case Keenum in this offseason. So this is a logical route, again, giving Case Keenum a wide receiver to throw to, because like I said, I don't think Alex Smith plays in the NFL ever again. I don't think he plays football ever again. So moving on, number 16 on the Carolina Panthers going with Andre Dillard, offensive tackle of Washington State. Now Andre Dillard, he had a great combine. His draft stock has moved up towards the first round. I think the Panthers, they logically improve the offensive line. I see a lot of offensive linemen going in this first round because this NFL, this era of the NFL is becoming all about offenses. And I've said this at least maybe 3 or 4 times, that the NFL, this era of the NFL, is becoming all about offenses. Because we've seen prolific offenses like the Chiefs and the Rams and maybe even the Eagles before Carson Wentz got hurt in the year they won the Super Bowl. We've even seen Matt Ryan in 2016 when he won MVP. I mean, I feel like we may have potential with the 49ers offense if Jimmy Garoppolo can stay healthy. So the NFL era is becoming all about offenses, and a lot of teams will want to draft offensive line to help protect the franchise quarterback. It honestly wouldn't surprise me if we saw if we saw at least half the teams go with an offensive lineman within the first 2 rounds. It just wouldn't surprise me at all. Maybe some may even stock up and go with multiple ones. But anyway, moving on. Number 17, I have the New York Giants. So this is the Giants' pick. This is what they got in exchange for Odell Beckham. DeAndre Baker, cornerback from Georgia. Now, I think DeAndre Baker has kind of slipped a little bit, but I don't think he slips that much. I mean, I've went on Reddit and I've been interested in a lot of mock drafts, and some have DeAndre Baker slipping as low as 27 or 29. But I think this is kind of an appropriate, respectable range for DeAndre Baker. I don't think he's going to be the first corner taken. I think he's maybe the second one to the Giants. I just feel like this is one of those things that the Giants are looking for. Although I feel like they could go offensive tackle. Although I do feel like if someone like Jonah Williams or Cody Ford is still there at 17, if they happen to slip, I have the Giants pick them up. Number 18, I have the Minnesota Vikings with Devin Bush, linebacker out of Michigan. Although I did have them going with Dexter Lawrence in the last mock draft. However, I just don't know. I'll kind of give a little teaser though. I don't have Dexter Lawrence in the first round in 5.0. I just don't know how a lot of these teams are perceiving Dexter Lawrence right now. Because of that failed drug test for the college football playoff last year, he injured his quad while doing the 40-yard dash at the combine. I don't know how they're perceiving Dexter Lawrence. I think it's best if I think he may end up slipping in the first round, to the second round. But even if he does fall to the second round, I think it's going to be within the first 3 or 4 picks will be selected. Number 19 of the Tennessee Titans with Byron Murphy, cornerback out of Washington. I just feel like they improved the secondary. Really not much to that one. Number 20 of the Pittsburgh Steelers doing with Kelvin Harmon, wide receiver out of North Carolina State. This is simply finding another wide receiver to replace Antonio Brown. As much as I think Juju Smith-Schuster has evolved himself a number 1 wide receiver, even if he is a number 1 wide receiver, even if he's earned the right, teams are going to double team him. They're going to double, triple team him eventually, just like they did with Antonio Brown. And when that happens, you're going to have to have somebody else. It's going to have to open up somebody else. And I think Kelvin Harmon, I think he can fit that bill for the Steelers. Number 21, I have the Seattle Seahawks going with T.J. Hawkinson, tight end out of Iowa. I feel like T.J. Hawkinson, I know this is kind of one of the most surprising picks of the first round in this mock draft, but I just don't see like the Seahawks passing up on someone like T.J. Hawkinson. I feel like this is more of an hopeful franchise plan. I feel like people are going to try to fight with trying to find the next Rob Gronkowski. And why not try by drafting one of the Iowa tight ends, since Iowa is being known to me as tight end university. Because we have Hawkinson, Noah Fant, who's also going to be in this first round mock draft, George Kittle. Iowa is just, it's like they're growing tight ends on trees. Number 22, I have the Baltimore Ravens with Chris Lindstrom, offensive tackle out of Boston College. I feel like you got to protect Lamar Jackson. Kind of a logical pick. As I feel like is with 23, the Houston Texans with Dalton Risner, offensive tackle out of Kansas State. Number 24 are the Oakland Raiders with Josh Jacobs, running back out of Alabama. And this is one of the most surprising picks as well, with the Raiders going with a running back. Although I feel like the Raiders are going to improve their defense with these picks, I feel like you got to at least improve the offense a little bit. Because since you're in the same division with the Kansas City Chiefs, you've got to have your offense match up with their offense. And I feel like you got to add a running back here because you have Marshawn Lynch, Doug Martin, and Jalen Richard all being free agents. And even if they don't sign with, even if they still resign, if they re-sign at least 2 or 3 of them, Marshawn Lynch and Doug Martin are getting up there in age. They're kind of at that point where running backs consider retirement. You're going to have to start fresh. And I think Josh Jacobs is one of the top running backs in this draft class. Although it won't surprise me if no running backs are taken in the first round this year. but I feel like there's going to be at least one taken in the first round. It's going to be towards this time. But I feel like a lot of teams are going to fight for running backs when we get to maybe round 3, maybe even late second. But I feel like Justice Hill's the best running back in this draft class. I feel like he's the one with the most NFL potential, just for reference. Next, we have the Philadelphia Eagles with Zach Allen, defensive end of Boston College. And I know that they improved their defensive line this week by signing Malik Jackson. But like I said last week in 4.0, it's just your Michael Bennett replacement. Although I feel like even if Malik Jackson's moved to that area, I feel like you got to stack up your defensive line. Number 26, I think Indianapolis Colts go with N'Keal Harry, wide receiver of Arizona State. And kind of a logical pick as well. I think you've got to go with a wide receiver to complement T.Y. Hilton. Because you got to find a number 2 receiver. Number 27, I have the Oakland Raiders go with Nasir Adderley, safety out of Delaware. The Raiders are improving their secondary with this pick. So this is kind of at least a logical pick. Because the Raiders secondary hasn't been that well in a long time. Number 28, I have the LA Chargers going with Deebo Samuel, wide receiver of South Carolina. And this may be a surprise pick as well. But you've got to get a receiver, I think. I feel like they might go wide receiver to kind of surprise some people. You got to set up Keenan Allen, Mike Williams, and you can add Deebo Samuel. I feel like that'd be a nice 3 wide receiver system for Phillip Rivers and the Chargers. Although they may go Mac Wilson, linebacker of Alabama at this point, or they may be one of those teams that trade out of the first round. Maybe try to gain some more draft capital for later rounds. I'll go back in the end and talk about things that stick out. But I think the Chargers, they may take a surprise route that nobody's expecting. Number 29 of the Kansas City Chiefs go with Mac Wilson, linebacker of Alabama. Kind of simple. Chiefs defense is just getting released one by one after the other. So that's that. Number 30, I have the Green Bay Packers with Greg Little, offense tackle of Ole Miss. Like I said, the Packers, they want to protect Aaron Rodgers because he's been injury prone the last few seasons, and this is Aaron Rodgers' prime at this point. Number 31, I have the LA Rams going with Brian Burns, defensive end of Florida State. I feel like they'd get a steal here if they picked up Brian Burns at 31, because I feel like Brian Burns is at least talented enough to fit into the top 20. And Ndamukong Suh is not expected to return to the Rams, so I feel like they find his replacement right here. And number 32, I have the New England Patriots going with Noah Fant, tight end out of Iowa. This is very simple, finding your Rob Gronkowski replacement. And Noah Fant, I think he would fit in with the Patriots system quite nicely, because I feel like this is simply your successor, Rob Gronkowski, and they've already cut Dwayne Allen, so you got to find that replacement. And I think it worked with Noah Fant, especially if Gronk happens to play another season or two. Fits Noah Fant right in the system. I feel like if Noah Fant was on the Patriots next season, I feel like he would have. I feel like he'd get at least 4 or 5 touchdowns next season. So that was the complete mock draft. So some things that stuck out to me. Like I said earlier, I feel like number 7, if we're in that scenario, if Quinnen Williams is still there, I feel like they're going to go with him. But if he's taken off the board, I feel like it could be DK Metcalf. So I feel like the 7th overall pick for the Jaguars at this point would either be Quinnen Williams or DK Metcalf, because DK Metcalf would be a huge target for Nick Foles to throw to, because the Jaguars have released Blake Bortles, so they are all in on Nick Foles with the 4 years and $88 million contract. So they're all in on Nick Foles, and they gotta, let's just show that they're in on Nick Foles by getting DK Metcalf. However, I feel like since Quinnen Williams is available at this point in the draft, I feel like you have to go with him. You have to take the best defensive player available, especially since they lost Malik Jackson in free agency. Another thing that sticks out to me, I feel like would be DeAndre Baker at 17. I feel like this one's up in the air. I feel like this would be the pick for the Giants, as it's their biggest need at this point, because they've already got their quarterback in Dwayne Haskins. They have got their wide receiver to replace Odell Beckham, hopefully, in Golden Tate, although he's not going to be like Odell Beckham. Although, could we see maybe a shocking development and have the Giants trade up with that 17th pick? Maybe they trade up to maybe number 9 or number 10 for DK Metcalf. And number 20 for Pittsburgh, the Steelers going with Kelvin Harmon, wide receiver of North Carolina State. Like I said, simply find replacements for Antonio Brown. Now I want to end this with a very bold prediction. And I think this prediction will be bold, but it would be pretty logical. I feel like since the Raiders, they pick early in the second round, there was one wide receiver that I did not mention in this first round, and that's Marquise Hollywood Brown. I think Marquise Hollywood Brown, if he still happens to be available in the second round, when it's the Raiders' turn, I think they will give him the call. I think they will draft Marquise Hollywood Brown in the second round if he is still available, because who's his cousin? Antonio Brown. And who did the Raiders trade for a week ago? Antonio Brown. And who do the Raiders want to make sure is happy in Oakland? Antonio Brown. And plus the chemistry between two cousins on the Oakland Raiders. And plus I feel like this would be a nice pick for the Raiders if they were able to get that opportunity. As I think Marquise Hollywood Brown, I feel like since Antonio Brown would have somebody close to him on that Raiders team, and he's very happy with Derek Carr, I feel like if you had Derek Carr, Antonio Brown, Marquise Hollywood Brown, I feel like you can set up a big three with those three in Oakland pretty soon to be Vegas. So I feel like that'd be a great fit. So I think that's my bold prediction of the NFL draft. If Marquise Hollywood Brown is available in the second round, I think they will give Marquise Hollywood Brown the call. They will call Antonio Brown. They will draft Antonio Brown's cousin in the second round. Although they could also draft number 27, depending on how the wide receiver situation is taking place at that time. I honestly feel like with the draft capital the Raiders have, I feel like they already got a plan in place to draft Marquise Hollywood Brown. The question is when. Is it going to be in the second round? Is it going to be pick 27? Maybe even pick 24, depending on how wide receivers are falling at the time. So that is my NFL Mock Draft 5.0. Like, share, and subscribe, and I will see you next time.